Hello, and welcome to my video, which is the top 10 wrestlers that I believe were booked too strong in their WWE careers. So this doesn't count anything outside of WWE, and also is my opinion, and you are bound to disagree with some stuff I say, disagree with some stuff I don't say, so feel free to let me know your 10 in the comments, or what you agree and disagree with. But let's, keep it civil, as wrestling fans always do on the internet. Anyway, let's jump straight into the list with number 10, King Mabel. Not an immediate name that jumped to my mind, admittedly, but about 7 or 8 jumped into my head immediately for this list, and I needed a couple more, and I thought, who had some really weird pushes that they just didn't need? King Mabel. So, King Mabel's number 10 on this list because he's the least incidental. Really, it was a short push, but let's be honest, he was rubbish. He was unsafe. He allegedly hurt many wrestlers on his way to getting this push. The push itself was rubbish. He won King of the Ring. He turned heel. Won King of the Ring, and then had a dreadful SummerSlam match with Diesel that was, as I put, extra rubbish. Which, according to Kevin Nash, was allegedly because Mabel performed an unsafe move, or a move unsafely, I should say. It was a safe move, that sit-down thing that all the big guys do, where they just sit on someone. Mabel used to perform that unsafely. Nash apparently requested he didn't do it in the match, and he ignored him and did it on his lower back, and nearly crippled Nash, allegedly. He then went on to his next feud. He broke Undertaker's face, like, legit, by being unsafe. Just this, even if he was actually really good for a big guy, he just wasn't that guy. And this was just a really weird overpush. Like, yeah. So there you go. That's number 10. Number 9, the Bushwackers. What do you say? The Bushwackers? The guys where one of them got eliminated from the Royal Rumble in, like, a couple of seconds by marching across the ring and getting chucked out? Yeah, those guys. They had, on average, between them, about a 78% win percentage throughout their entire WWF career, which, by the way, their win percentage, higher than Hulk Hogan, higher than John Cena, but to no real consequence, and that's why I think they're on this list, because they were constantly given wins over people, yet they never actually won the tag titles, never got, like, a significant, like, benefit from those wins, and weren't used dramatically to, like, because what you do with a team with that sort of win percentage is you give them a dominant run with the tag titles, and then you make someone by having them beat them, right? No, they just had them march around and lick each other's heads. So they were very popular and entertaining, and I enjoy watching the Bushwackers when I watch that sort of era of WWE, but they were definitely overpushed for their place in the card, to be perfectly honest. But no real harm was done, so that's why they're super low, number 9. Number 8, Brutus Beefcake, or as a certain Mr. Thompson calls him,
Brutus the f***ing Barber Beefcake.
Brutus Beefcake had a 76% career win percentage. And you know why? Because he was Hulk Hogan's friend.
Oh, friend!
That's it. That's literally it. That's the whole entry. That's all I've typed for him on my list. Because I've not written a script for this. I've just written, like, my list and my reasons and figured I'd improvise around it. 3 in 4 matches he won. Pretty much the same win-loss record, percentage-wise, as a Hulk Hogan, as a John Cena. But it's Brutus Beefcake. Like, didn't he end... Was it to Tanker's undefeated streak? Or was it Mr. Perfect's? I think it was Mr. Perfect's, right? For what reason? Like, just no. For being Hulk Hogan's friend? No. Get out of here, Brutus Beefcake. No. Number 7. This one's going to be controversial. This one's going to get a couple of comments, I think. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, bear with me. I know this is an unpopular opinion, and this is not me hating on Steve Austin. This list is not undeserved pushes. This list is not, people who never deserve to be the stature of star that they were, or anything like that. This is just people who are pushed too strong. And I know it's going to be an unpopular opinion, but bear with me and let me tell you, Steve Austin is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, so I'm not hating on Stone Cold here. But he's low down on the list. He's in number 7 because the push he received was absolutely deserved. He made the most money of anyone ever in wrestling at that point. Like, he was just on another stratosphere. One of the hottest stars of all time, if not the hottest star of all time. And like I said, one of my personal favourites. He's on the list, though, because he won in some ridiculous situations where the referee, the ring announcer, the timekeeper, and all 4 of the turnbuckle posts had been replaced by his enemies, and he'd still somehow win and retain the WWE title in matches where he could perfectly well have lost, and it would have been justified, and then he could have gone on to win the title back, and it would have, I don't know, it would have made more sense than having him overcome all of that, just because it's Stone Cold Steve Austin. He basically never lost clean since WrestleMania 14. Like, once he started becoming the top guy, he never lost clean. It was always an obscene amount of shenanigans. Losing a first blood match to a guy that was covered head to toe, and then winning the title back the next night. Like, you know, stuff like that. And as far as I can remember, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, he never really put anyone over. And no, The Rock at WrestleMania 19 doesn't count, because The Rock already had his Hollywood career set up by that point. He was already basically done. So that's not putting someone over. The Rock was already one of the biggest stars in the history of the industry. He never used that stature to bring up the next guy, and that's what you're supposed to do. So that, in my opinion, is why he deserves a place on the list. He won situations that no human being should ever have been able to win, and he was presented as John Everyman. He wasn't presented as like Superman. He was, you know, Mr. Relatable, the guy who hates his boss, and yet he was just absolutely unstoppable. And yeah, I don't think that booking would ever have worked, like, in later eras, because everyone would have turned on it, like they did with John Cena, like they did with Roman Reigns. More on them to come. But yeah, so that's why Stone Cold Steve Austin's on the list. Have at it in the comments. Number 6, Goldberg. But to clarify, Oldberg. This is about his second run, because in his first run, I think a lot of people agree he maybe should have had better treatment considering what a star he was and what his strengths were in WCW, and WWE just didn't play to those in his first run. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the old man with the white goatee who took the Universal title off Kevin Owens for no reason and ruined the Owens-Jericho feud being for the Universal title at WrestleMania, that magnificent feud. He took the title that he didn't need for his feud, just because he's Goldberg. He ruined The Fiend by beating him with a very bad suplex in Saudi Arabia. Didn't need the title that time either. Basically, this old man kept getting pushed at the expense of up-and-coming, already popular, current stars for world title reigns he just simply did not need in any way, shape, or form. And I think that is enough to warrant being on this list at number 6. Number 5, Roman Reigns. With a caveat, this is about the big dog, Roman Reigns. I know the tribal chief, Roman Reigns, has arguably been pushed harder than the big dog ever was. But the reason why I'm not including the tribal chief in this is because I'm waiting to see how it ends. At the time of recording this, the push is still on and can still be used to make an absolute megastar out of someone else. Now, people will argue there have been opportunities. There was Drew McIntyre at Clash at the Castle. There was Sami Zayn in Montreal. There was Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. There was Jey Uso at SummerSlam was a possibility. But until they somehow end this like a damp squib and no one benefits from it, I'm not going to include that, because that can make all the difference is how this push ends. But the big dog, he was pushed despite the fans for years, for like 4 years. It was like late 2014, after the Shield breakup, when everyone realised, oh, this is the chosen boy, and everyone started rebelling against it. And it was late 2018 when he announced he had leukemia and took some time off, and everyone eased up on him a bit because, obviously. But that's 4 years of WWE just pushing this guy over and over, as a face, I might add, over and over and over again, pushing him down our throats, having him win a Royal Rumble where the obvious thing was Daniel Bryan. Like, just just doing everything they could to make us hate him, whilst insisting that we like him because he's a babyface. It was just... There was relentless pushback from WWE fans. I was at WrestleMania 31. And by the way, credit to Reigns and Brock Lesnar in that match. They turned the crowd. Go back and watch that. From my experience watching it live in the stadium, they turned the crowd. The crowd was starting to side with Roman Reigns towards the end of that match. And then the cash-in was just magnificent. But they were turning the crowd. They did a masterful job at that. But the point stands. Also, pay attention at the start of that match to the reaction, the reception that Roman Reigns gets. The top babyface in the main event of WrestleMania. Ridiculous it was. And they just kept pushing relentlessly regardless of this. And being like, oh, you know what'll work? Let's have him lose the title in the Royal Rumble against all odds. Oh, everyone loves the guy who loses against all odds. And then we'll have him win it back at WrestleMania. The next year, and let's have him beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania the year after. And just stop, WWE. Just stop. So yeah, I think Roman Reigns, the big dog era, really deserves to be on this list. If this tribal chief era doesn't go anywhere, and doesn't end up benefiting anyone except Roman Reigns, that might end up as number 1 on this list. Who knows? Like, it really depends on how bad it gets. But I will say one more thing in the defense of the tribal chief is he's made people look strong when beating them. He's made near enough every opponent look like they could have beat him. He's won most of his matches with interference. He's, and he's given them big moments, big kickouts, stuff like that. So, and big, very close near falls. So he's not been just put over everyone and everyone's been buried at his expense. So, people have come out of losses to Roman Reigns looking better than they went in, which is a sign of someone doing their job right when they're the top guy. So yeah, that's another reason why I don't think Tribal Chief belongs on this list just yet. Number 4, Charlotte Flair. Okay, I put some notes down for this. I did some research. I really went deep on this because the Charlotte Flair thing really annoys me. So, Charlotte Flair has been a 14-time women's champion in just 7.5 years on the main roster. She also had the NXT title before coming up to the main roster. She's had another run with the NXT title. She's had a tag title reign, but this is just singles world titles. 14 in 7.5 years. And it's just been ridiculous number padding. So as much as this is bookings, you might think, well, surely that means she's lost a load. Yeah, but we're going to get to that. So the first 2 reigns, which I counted separately because number padding, they changed the name of the title. She held the Divas title, then she held the women's title when it got revealed it was going back to that. And that counts as 2 different reigns, apparently. And they totaled 309 days. That's off to a good start. That's, she was a new star on the roster at the time. I get that. Then she lost the title for 27 days. Then she won it for 43 days. Then she lost it for 27 days. Then she won it for 29 days. Then she lost it for 20 days. Then she won it for 57 days. Then she lost it for like 9 months. And we actually got a bit of respite from Charlotte Flair. But it was just this ridiculous flip-flopping. And I know the feud with Sasha Banks was really good. But it could have been just as good with half the title changes, I think. And then the following title reigns that were slightly longer gaps in between. They weren't all like less than a month without seeing Charlotte Flair with a title belt. But she held it for 147 days, 28 days, 12 days, 5 minutes, 5 days, 1 day. Do you see what I mean about reign padding? And then the last 3 are half decent. 62 days, 2 whole months. Wow. That's like her 3rd longest reign with the title. With the 4th longest reign with a title. 2 whole months. 198 days and 92 days, her most recent one. Average reign length of about 70 days. And the first one, might I remind you, which admittedly was 2 reigns because number padding, was 309 days. Ridiculous. Of the time since Charlotte won her first main roster world championship, she has spent 34% of the days holding a world title. 34%. Over 1 in 3 days holding a world title. And by the way, I'm not including the time she was NXT champion or a tag champion, which would bump up to 38%. Now, I hear what you're saying. She lost a load. How can she be booked that strong if she lost all those title reigns? Well, let me run through that. The first reign, she didn't lose. The title just changed names, and she got a second reign out of it. Second reign, she lost and won back within a month. Third reign, she lost it and won it back within a month. Fourth reign, she lost it and won it back within a month. Fifth reign, she lost the title to Bayley, but it was unclean. She got hit in the throat with a crutch by Sasha Banks. So, not exactly putting Bayley over huge there. Sixth reign, she was cashed in on. Oh, and she won it back. Seventh reign, she actually lost to Becky, but it was with a roll-up, which is pretty anticlimactic, right? Her eighth reign, she lost her title without being pinned in the triple threat at WrestleMania 35, which she only got given that title just to shoehorn her into that main event anyway. The ninth reign, she was cashed in on, and she won it back. Are you seeing a pattern here?
Man, I'm seeing patterns all over the place.
10th reign, she lost to a roll-up. Like, the only time she loses it doesn't immediately win it back, like, and it's clean. It's a roll-up. Like, no one gets the actual upper hand on Charlotte Flair. I don't know if you've, like, realised that's the pattern. No one ever gets, like, the actual last say with Charlotte Flair. Her 11th reign, she got cashed in on, and she won it back. 12th reign ended because she did a belt swapsies with Becky Lynch in the middle of the ring. Yeah, they count those as two separate reigns as well. You talk about padding, two of these reigns never actually ended. She just swapped belts, and they've still counted as 4 reigns. Like, ugh. The 13th, she tapped out, well, said I quit, to deserving young up-and-comer, unheard-of superstar Ronda Rousey in an I Quit match. Arguably the most convincing loss for a title that she'd had up until this point. Oh, and by the end of that year, she won it back within 40 seconds. It wasn't the same reign. Ronda had lost it and regained it again, but she still got a win back. And then her 14th and thus far final reign, she lost to Rhea Ripley and hasn't won it back yet. But there is time. There is time. So yeah, that is why Charlotte Flair is on this list and is so high up it, because just no one ever gets one over on her. Like, she's not booked that strong in terms of statistics, but my God, is she booked strong. Like, crazy, crazy statistics. 3 of her title reigns ended when she was cashed in on Money in the Bank. 2 of them ended when the title changed, and they still counted it as a new reign. Like, so she didn't even lose 5 of them clean. She lost 1 because of someone hitting her in the throat with a crutch. That's 6 of the 14. And then how many of them did I say she won it back, won it back, won it back, won it back? Quite often within like a month or something. Like, just number padding. Anyway, moving on. Number 3, John Cena. Now, I quite like John Cena these days. I've come round to him, but everyone knows what era of John Cena I'm talking about, and it was awful. It was like Charlotte, but he was even harder to beat clean, and it was like 9.5, near enough 10 years solid from winning his first WWE title. It was 9.5 years from then until the Lesnar mauling, till Suplex City. After which, he had a couple of great US title runs. The first one shouldn't have happened, by the way, because he beat Rusev for it, and that was the wrong decision. But that plays into this. But there's no denying the US title runs were really good, and he had one more WWE title run after that. So his booking eased off. He started putting people over, started having more competitive matches with lower card guys. He started losing clean to people. That's fine. We're not talking about after Lesnar destroyed him. We're talking about before. He's only higher on the list than Charlotte because, for me, the big difference here was at least WWE acknowledged that we hate what they're doing with Charlotte, and she's been mostly heel since the Becky heel turn fiasco, to be honest. Since Becky Lynch turned heel on Charlotte and everyone cheered her, they've basically kept Charlotte heel. But they pushed and pushed with Cena as a face when there were times they really shouldn't have. Basically, the previous 2 entries, Big Dog Roman Reigns and Charlotte Flair, John Cena at his peak was the worst of both worlds, but for longer than either of those worlds have existed so far. And it was just relentless. It was just the only time he didn't have a title, or at least in a title program, to me, seemed to be when he was out injured. Even when he didn't have the title, he'd be booked as the main event over the champion. I remember Cena versus John Laurinaitis main event in a pay-per-view where CM Punk was defending the WWE title. And it's like, I get Cena's a big deal, but it's John Laurinaitis that can go on anywhere in the card. No one cares about this. Put the WWE title at the top. And not just because I'm a CM Punk fan, because it's the WWE title and the other match has John Laurinaitis in it. Like, but no, John Cena supersedes all of that and goes on last. It was just awful, awful times, honestly. And I'm glad he came out of it and started putting people over. And he would have been lower down the list if he'd have done a lot more of the putting people over clean earlier when it mattered. Because, okay, I'm going to talk about someone who you are going to definitely think is conspicuous by their absence on this list. I'm going to talk about Triple H. Reign of Terror Man isn't on this list. What? Yeah, because Triple H, while he was a main eventer fighting for world championships, or even sometimes holding world championships, helped make Chris Benoit. I know, didn't work out well, but at the time, it was a good move. Batista, John Cena, Randy Orton, Jeff Hardy. There's probably other examples, but I can just rattle off 5 off the top of my head. Now, yes, there was a lot of Reign of Terror. There was a couple of matches that people all agree he should have lost. Booker T springs to mind. Goldberg springs to mind. But the thing is, to make wins over someone matter, they have to be very dominant. If Triple H was just 50-50 but throughout his entire career, him losing the world title to Batista would not have meant anything like as much as it did. So, Triple H, as much as he had the Reign of Terror, and some of it dragged on, and some of it was a bit much, it was done unclean, it was done as a heel, and he was still giving back even when he was the top guy. He was still being beaten by people. And I think that makes the big difference. Whereas John Cena, when he was the top guy, only ever lost unclean, and then did all his giving back once he'd pretty much got one foot out the door for Hollywood as it was already. And I think that makes a really big difference here. But Cena, love him now. Like, he's willing to lose to Austin Theory now. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about his win-loss record at all. Now, let's move on up the list before everyone gets so mad at me for not including Triple H. Speaking of Triple H, someone else with 3 H names. Number 2, Hulk Hogan, or Hollywood Hulk Hogan, but we're mainly talking about Hulk Hogan, the 80s guy here. So I put here in my notes, he's like Cena and Charlotte, but just way more blatant that it was all politicked. This wasn't Vince McMahon's doing. Obviously it was, because he gets the final say, but there's so much, like, pretty much confirmed information about Hogan politicking his way through things, in the 80s and early 90s. And, you know, so he's like John Cena, but it's his fault. so he goes higher on the list. And another thing, there was only one world champion. While Charlotte has been doing all her dominating and being women's champion for a third of her time on main roster, there was another women's world champion. While John Cena was doing all his dominating and super Cena-ing, there was another world champion. Now, the fact that other world championship wasn't always booked the best is not really John Cena's fault. The thing with Hogan, there was only one world champion. It was a different era. And so that meant that the likes of Roddy Piper, Jake Roberts, Ted DiBiase, Mr. Perfect, Rick Rude, hell, I'm going to throw Randy Savage in there. Even though he had a couple of reigns with the WWF title, Randy Savage should have had so much more. Like, there's so many stars that had no run with the main title, or in Savage's case, too little time with the world title. All because it had to be Hogan all the time. Like, it was, 4 years in one go at one point? And it's just like, why? Why couldn't some people have had just a few months here and there, you know, just to give them the flowers, you know, some of these amazing talents. Listen to those names I just rattled off that all got basically fed to Hogan. Just crazy stuff. Also, another reason Hogan is higher up the list, Flair and Cena were both much better wrestlers than Hogan. Like, I know people will say, oh, look at Hogan in Japan. I plan to, because I've seen a little bits, and it isn't that much better, but I'm going to give it an actual proper watch and do a video on it. So subscribe, and you'll see that someday. I plan to do it within the next couple of months, but that's going to take a bit of work, because I've got to find the matches, you know, actually watch them, take notes, make the video, etc. So, you know, it's going to take a little while, but it will be done. But yeah, it's in his WWF run, Hogan was rubbish. Point, pout, punch, kick, leg drop. That's it. That was his offense, and the rest of it was selling pretty badly. But Hulk Hogan doesn't take the top spot because he was at least loyal, and until he wasn't. At number 1, Ultimate Warrior. Yeah, he was booked way too strong. So, this guy beat Hogan clean. No one did that. I mean, minus Hulk's little kick-out party at 3.1, of course. But, you know, that was all on Hogan. That wasn't booking, was it? He was paired with a bunch of top-tier talent. Again, I just mentioned some of these, but Ted DiBiase, Mr. Perfect, Rick Rude. And despite that being who he was paired up with, still only managed a decent at best WWF title run, which I've covered in detail on this channel, so check that out once we're done here. Before losing it incredibly uncleanly with a scepter shot from Randy Savage, if I remember rightly, as interference on the second lot of interference by 2 people in that match. So yeah, like I say, more on that in my Ultimate Warrior video. His win percentage in his WWE career was over 89%. It was 89 point something percent, according to my source. Where is it? 89.36%. That's obscene. 9 in every 10 matches. Right, let me just run through this. He joined in 1987. He beat everyone, including Hogan in 1990. He beat Hogan 3 years. He beat Hogan clean 3 years into his run. He lost while remaining very protected in January 1991. He then threw a wobbly over Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, the biggest star on the planet, undisputably at that point, and for pretty much a decade at that point. He threw a wobbly over him, getting paid more than him at WrestleMania in 1991. He threw his wobbly in July 91. He then quit in October 91. He returned in April 92 for WrestleMania 8, and then he was released in November 92 for allegedly a failed steroid test or for experimenting with growth hormones or whatever you believe from whoever said it. But what a roller coaster for, like, and to push that guy, who, by the way, let's be honest, was a significantly below average quality wrestler that people hated to work with because he was rough, and not in a, oh, he's snug kind of way, rough in a, he doesn't know what he's doing and he grabs people by the balls to gorilla press slam them one, kind of way. And he was the hardest pushed of all time with a pretty much 90% win record. Why? Because he looked like that, like, because he was Vince McMahon's wet dream, like, do you know what I mean? Just ridiculous. So that's why he gets the top spot. Now, let me know what you agree with and disagree with, what you'd rearrange in order, who you'd take out, who you'd put in. Give me some whys as well. You know, I'll happily sit there and discuss it with you in the comment section. Like, I love receiving comments and having a good old debate on the internet. Let's just try and keep it civil, yeah? Anyway, leave a like if you enjoyed this video overall, and subscribe if you're new here. I'm trying to branch out into more content like this, so please do let me know by liking, subscribing, leaving comments, all that good stuff, that you enjoy this type of content, because it does take a little bit more work than sitting down for half an hour and playing a video game. So, you know, do let me know that it's worth doing. It'd be greatly appreciated. Also, tell your friends if you think they enjoy this kind of content. Let them know about this video. But for now, all I have left to say is thank you very much for watching. As always, I've been EBEZA, you've been amazing, and I will see you next time.